Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Heroic Efforts. Thank you for joining us once again. We have a very timely and exciting episode today. Before we get into our topic, I have to introduce my co-host, Mr. Martin Fisher.
Woo, I'm about to make a name for myself, yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm just here with my fellow booners here to talk about Legion and New Mutants.
It's going to be a pretty great boon sesh, that's for sure.
That's right.
It is not a boon sesh or a goon sesh if we're not also joined by Mr. Nick Talamante.
What's up, everybody? I'm about to make a name for myself. If you couldn't tell, we just saw fucking Deadpool and Wolverine.
Exactly, yes. And we've also been, like, our brains have been fried from the memes over the last week as well.
Yeah.
So it's a perfect episode to talk about the end of the Fox Marvel era, which is what we're here to discuss. We are having a double episode of Noah Hawley's Legion and the New Mutants. And my voice gets a little higher as I say that title.
Let me sell that better. The New Mutants.
But yes, that is what we are planning on discussing today, because everyone's talking about Fox Marvel, and it's important for us to just set the stage a little bit for where we were at this time, because everyone's so nostalgic about Fox Marvel now. They saw the Green Day tribute in the credits, and they're like, man, those movies were good. They weren't there in 2017 like we were when we knew they were good from the get-go.
We were in the trenches trying to convince everybody.
They were like, no, it's actually really good. Stop listening to Screen Junkies for 5 fucking seconds and actually watch the movies. So, at the time when one of these was released and the other was supposed to be released, Deadpool 2016 had completely changed people's view of the franchise, because now it was no longer growing out of the original trilogy made by a director who name slips my mind on purpose.
That guy.
But it was the first time the franchise, aside from, I would say, arguably the Wolverine, had moved beyond the aesthetics and storylines of those films. Mm-hmm. So people... The tone was completely different. Deadpool took everybody by surprise, and suddenly the Fox Marvel franchise, in addition to the success of Days of Future Past, was now getting close to the same level as the MCU. Deadpool's outgrossing a lot of MCU movies. We're moving towards, R-rated. They're pioneering those types of comic book films, and... yeah, Martin, you were there in the trenches with me in comicbookmovie.com.
I was indeed. So it was a thing where it was like, okay, 2016 was a weird year for FoX-Men, because you had to be like, yeah, Deadpool just came out and rocked the fucking world, and X-Men Apocalypse just came out and made everybody go like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Real bad.
Yeah.
We'll make that an episode one day. I think it's okay.
Well,
but that...
Fan Forstick had almost sunk the whole ship.
Fan Forstick almost sank the whole ship a year before. It was a weird period. It's like X-Men Days of Future Past is like the best one of the bunch at the time, considered by many. And then fucking, Fan Forstick comes out and everyone goes like, oh boy. And this is when Marvel's on their rise, of course. But then you got Deadpool coming out and changing the game completely for the genre and doing, God's work by finally making a tangible X-Men spinoff that isn't Wolverine. So things are looking up. And then X-Men Apocalypse comes out and everyone's just like, maybe we don't need more of these X-Men movies. And then Fox goes, maybe we shouldn't make more X-Men movies. Maybe we should just make a lot of spinoffs. So...
which we were all down for.
Which I was absolutely down for every single one, even Multiple Man with James Franco pre-allegations.
Again, this is early 2017, everybody. 2017. It was a nice innocent time, early 2017, where nothing had gone wrong in the world and there was not a single controversy.
You could still watch James Franco and Seth Rogen's films that they did together, or you could watch the music video they did on Kanye's song "Falling in Love." You could watch that and not feel weird at all about it. I can't do that anymore.
Nope, because James Franco became multiple allegations man.
That's right.
Yeah. You could get excited about his Oscar chances for the Disaster Artist.
Yep.
Maybe that was just me because I was fresh out of high school. But we should get into the and by the way, I was being sarcastic. We were living in a hellscape at this time, but it wasn't even close to what was about to come down the pike. But we were getting optimistic about some of these spin-offs that were coming out, and I'll just speed run through them. Gambit with Channing Tatum was attempting to get off the ground for the first or second time around this time.
Keep in mind, this is Channing Tatum just off of the 21 Jump Street franchise, so he was fucking hot shit at that time.
Yeah, he's in the pocket.
And
in this era.
Foxcatcher.
Yes,
and Foxcatcher, where people started to take it seriously as a dramatic actor.
Yep.
So that really spoke to everyone. We had, as always, Multiple Man with James Franco, which, keep in mind, if we're talking about any of this stuff, it's pre-allegations. This is what we were thinking at the time. Because, you gotta remember, Legion had just dropped, Deadpool was the year before, Logan was about to come out, so when they're like, oh, like a weird little small budgeted Multiple Man movie with James Franco, it's like, that sounds weird and cool and like it could be fun.
Sure.
You know, like that sounded like an interesting idea. And you know what? They could still do it. Just swap him out with Jake Gyllenhaal or somebody.
No, they were just like, okay, after everything, they're just like, all right, everybody, we're happy to announce we have a new Multiple Man. Army Hammer, come on the stage.
Oh, no.
All right, everybody.
He's like licking his fingers, just like, oh, hey, everybody.
Do you think Army Hammer would want to be Multiple Man so that he could cannibalize himself?
Yo, hey, that's
got to be like
right
masturbating for a cannibal. Like, and he's doing it to himself so he can't get in trouble for it.
Hey.
Because if he's going to go to court for it, they're going to be like, "But Your Honor." But it's like the old philosophical, like if you kill your clone, is that murder? Like,
This is the weirdest episode of Twilight Zone ever.
Exactly. So then they had a Kitty Pryde spinoff, a Shadow Cat spinoff that was being planned.
Who was it? Brian Michael Bendis working on that one, or was it Brian K. Vaughan? It was one of those two Brians.
I believe it was Bendis that was working on Kitty Pryde, and I believe it was Brian K. Vaughan that was working on their Silver Surfer reboot.
Oh, that's right.
Which I would also like. Yeah. Side note, Noah Hawley was working on a Doctor Doom movie. Very sad we didn't see that. X-Men Fear the Beast, which was going to be a horror movie. Have you heard of that?
I don't remember this.
Had you not? This was going to be the horror movie with Nicholas Holt's Beast, where it, like half of it took place in the woods.
What?
And he has to invent the serum that you see in Days of Future Past to control it. Because I'm serious, Google it. It comes up. Like I didn't make this up.
They were, okay, to be fair, they were announcing like 8 spin-offs within like a 2-month period, so some of them, I guess, slipped through the cracks, where even I'm just like, that's never happening.
Yeah, I'm just surprised you didn't remember that one, because it's it's the horror movie version of Beasts. That was the thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then,
Beast
of course,
is the Beast Brian Singer. It just he injects himself, he turns back into human, and he's Bryan Singer. That's scarier, seeing in the woods, not Beast. It's Bryan Singer coming out of the forest.
Or Brett Ratner.
Yeah.
Actually, Brett Ratner was the one that introduced Beast to the film.
Jesus.
Oh my god. And then, we also can't forget
and X-Force.
And we can't forget to mention X-Force, which was supposed to be the actual Deadpool 3. But, you know, I guess Jeff Wadlow really fucked his career over by making Kick-Ass 2, so...
I bounced back with Fantasy Island or Truth or Dare or whichever one of those.
Oh my god, I don't remember. Yeah, he did do Fantasy Island, the horror movie.
Maybe he did both of those. But either way, you couldn't go like 2 fucking weeks without Fox announcing some other spinoff. So they're just throwing stuff at the wall to see what would stick. You get Logan coming out in March of 2017, getting like universal critical and commercial acclaim, eventually getting like an Oscar nomination. I still think it's in the top 5 comic book movies of all time. Fantastic. It's excellent.
Yeah, easily.
And And you got to remember, this is pre-Disney, so Fox didn't have any trepidations about announcing this, because as far as they were concerned, they were just building on an already successful franchise. They weren't worried about continuity. They weren't worried about tying into anything. They didn't give a shit. They're like, all right, horror movie with the Beast. Let's do it.
Yep.
Like, does it make sense? No. Like, let's do it. And you'll see that led to both of what we're talking about today.
Yes.
For better and worse.
This is going to come up a lot, but
literally.
Post X-Men Apocalypse's reception, there was a lot of like, okay, fuck continuity. Screw it.
Exactly.
That leads us.
Yeah.
It worked out better. That's how we got Logan. So, and Legion, which we should now discuss. And it will lead us through this discussion.
Cue the strange dance they do in the first episode.
Yes, which, by the way, fun fact, Dan Stevens had the flu while they were shooting.
Ooh,
they had to shoot it in one day, and he had the flu, and he managed to knock it out, which shows what a consummate professional he is. Love that man.
Hey, what a trooper. What a trooper.
But we'll get to him later. The most important person involved in this show, arguably, is Noah Hawley, who had previously created FX's Fargo, which we should just say, the fact that he created a Fargo show that is not only worthy of the Coen Brothers original, but on the level of the Coen Brothers original, you give that guy a blank check.
Yep.
Like, FX obviously gave him a blank check. And he was offered an X-Men spin-off, but he wasn't that interested in it. Which was the Hellfire Club. So he chose to instead do Legion, which is based on the character of David Haller, who's Professor X's son, yada, yada, yada.
Yada, yada, yada.
Much better choice.
Yes.
Because from frame one, you can see this unlike anything we've ever seen before.
Oh, yeah. Like this. So to kind of lay my cards on the table, I've only seen the first episode, so I only watched the pilot for the show, and I'm gonna go back and finish the season because, god damn, was this so good? This was like it. Saying it's good is actually kind of an understatement. I'm trying to like keep it like, you know, in reasonable terms here, but like I was really genuinely blown away by like how much sauce this first episode of a fucking TV show, an FX TV show, no less. Like they really did give him a blank check and let him do whatever he want, and thank God, because my man was cooking. Like the cinematography, the aesthetics, the vibes of this entire first episode from the jump, literally, like Andy said, from frame one, we're off to the races. I'm like, oh, you could kind of feel like this is not just your rinky-dink fucking ABC Shield show, you know what I mean, or one of those monotonous, like, you know, low budget superhero TV shows. This is just like, it almost feels like a movie, like how it comes out the gate swinging. It's so fucking good. I was genuinely shocked by like how much I enjoyed this and just how fucking like amazing that everything is about the show, like from the production to the cast to the performances, even the music choice, like everything about the vibes of this are just fucking off the charts, man.
Yeah. And then you got to remember that like they were going to give this guy a Doctor Doom movie. Why the fuck didn't that happen? But like, so like the X-Men franchise for 17 years had been exclusively films, ups and downs, getting a worse I'd say arguably getting a worse reputation than it deserves, because people don't remember just how good the good ones are. The good Fox X-Men movies are some of the best the genre has to offer. And so it's so cool that they come out of the gate swinging with their first TV show, and it's one of the best comic book TV shows ever made. It's perfect.
It is the best X-Men show ever made. I feel like that shouldn't be a controversial opinion. It probably is. I don't know. I think it's the
Is there
best
some
X-Men
Gifted
show.
fan out there?
I don't know.
Some fan of the Gifted out there?
There's someone that's going to be like the animation heads who are just like, oh, X-Men 97. But
yeah, or somebody's going to actually, X-Men Evolution is the best, which is good, but
when we're talking about Marvel, does it include Marvel's What If, which I think is just a fantastic show? No, Legion is fantastic. Legion is exactly, to get in the same month, March 2017, to get in the same month, two drastically different adaptations in the world of the X-Men that are clearly driven completely by the creator over studio is amazing. And the fact that, you know, Logan is such a fantastic film, a great modern day Western with, like, you know, the death of a hero and all that. We cannot sing that movie's praises enough, of course. But Legion as well stands above and alone. There is nothing else like Legion. There has not been anything like Legion. There probably will never be anything like it again. It is such a unique television series. It is such a unique adaptation of a comic book material. Specifically, a kind of offshoot character who had his own little spin-off run series that was pretty cool. It was pretty cool, but like he took it in a completely different direction and made it transcended the material, I think.
This is what we always ask for from these comic book adaptations, where it's like, get somebody who wants to tell a story and then let them plug in the things from the comic books that they're interested in so that it forms a cohesive whole. Not, okay, here's the Dark Phoenix saga and you have to include X, Y, and Z. You have to have aliens because that's what comic book fans are going to want, the aliens and shit like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's, we have to include this from this particular run because they'll get all mad at us. Like, the best thing that ever happened to the Logan movie is the fact that it's just based on the idea of Old Man Logan.
Yes.
Because I remember before that was coming out, people were like, well, if they don't own the rights to all these Marvel characters, maybe instead of a blind Hawkeye, it could be a blind Cyclops. Maybe instead of the Hulk, it could be the Thing. What was the shittiest movie of fucking all time? Like, you know, like the fact that they just went like, okay, the idea of Old Man Logan is cool. Let us do our version of that.
They can only operate in the realm of comic book references. They can't operate in the realm of like what serves a film, what serves an adaptation better. You know?
Yes, exactly.
Legion is a case of that for sure.
Yeah,
yes,
I think you guys point out the like key point for both the success of like Logan, which again, one of the greatest in the genre, just fantastic fucking film. But why that and Legion work so well is it's one of the few examples we get really in this subgenre, especially as of late, of what they're supposed to be, which is adaptations. I think so far the studios, again, just because it's so driven by like, you know, online fan outcry and consumption, and they have, you know, there's this kind of unequal balance of feeding the masses what they want or what they think they want from just like the loudest seals clapping and actually like producing something that's like artistic. Not to get overly pretentious about fucking superhero stuff, but like why I really enjoyed Logan and why I really enjoyed this is, again, like Andy pointed out, you're clearly both of these creators went in with an intention of like, okay, I want to tell this story and let me pick and choose the things from the comics that help me tell that story, help me elevate that story, and help me like deliver on the concept, the themes, the characters that I want to do, but without have to fucking check mark every single fucking reference for everybody to be soy facing the audience and pointing at the screen like, oh, that's what's his face, that's Blim Blam, that's Bozo Man, you know what I mean? Like you don't need any of that dumb shit that drags it down. You just have to focus on, okay, what are the best elements I need to tell the story that I want? You know what I mean? Logan is an old man, he's dying, he's in a fucked up future. Cool. I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna run with the rest of my own. You know what I mean? That's how you do it. So I really appreciated Legion kind of like leaning into that and not having to worry too much about like all the the typical kind of nonsense that works really well within the context of a comic book, but doesn't benefit at all when you're doing an on-screen adaptation.
Right. Well, what's so cool about Legion is it already takes such a unique premise, and this is something that I think we've seen almost try to be aped in later comic book shows or adaptations, where the whole premise is essentially, what if a person with psychic abilities was also mentally unstable? That is it. Yep. That is the core concept of it. That is it. What happens when someone who is mentally unstable gets psychic abilities and doesn't really know how to control them at all, and there might be other people trying to make it worse? It's great.
Well,
it's
also
a simple premise.
It's about what if someone was gaslit their entire life. It's the premise of the show is your life is not what you thought it was, told through the lens of an X-Men character.
Yep.
The X-Men stuff is just an excuse to tell the emotional parts of the story. It's not this arbitrary way of like, well, we have to give him the big eraser head haircut because that's what he has in the 90s cartoons. Like the first season, spoiler alert, which I mean everybody has to watch this because it's amazing. It's on Hulu right now. The first season doesn't even have Professor X in it. It doesn't even fucking explain that he's Professor X's kid. Like that's not a part of the story. It's not important. No. What's important is it's a human being who has abilities that others cannot understand, and he has been exploited and lied to, and the consequences of that mental trauma are now really starting to come to the surface.
They're starting to manifest.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And
yes,
and
it's excellent.
It's excellent. No, yeah,
Yeah.
Excellent. Huh?
Excellent.
I use a good barometer for this show is that my dad he likes comic book movies. He took me to see them growing up. He used to read some Marvel comics when he was a kid, like everybody did, you know. But he kind of fell off when I started just going with my friends and everything like that when I grew up. And he doesn't watch any of the shows or anything like that. I somehow was able to convince him. I'm like, we can try this out. I don't know if you're going to like it, but we should try this out. I think there's something in there you might dig. So me, him, and his wife, we put on the first episode of Legion. And you know what happened? We watched the entire fucking season in one day. He was hooked. He was glued the fuck in. That is how good this is. This is a show that appeals to comic book readers and the general audience, but not in a way that makes you feel like you're an idiot while you watch it, where you're just like, oh, they're just flashy colors and they're name dropping all these characters I don't really understand. You know, it tells a very relatable story with characters that feel like real people, and it approaches it in a human way. It approaches this from the perspective of the story is, of course, important, but it is not the driving force. The driving force is, I want to see David get better. I want him to be happy, because it seems like his whole life just sucks, and every force around him is trying to make it worse.
Yeah.
Yes, and leading to like one of the great comic book villains of all time, which, if you haven't watched it yet, just skip ahead to when we start making fun of New Mutants, because you don't want it spoiled. But we do have to talk a little bit about the spoilers. Chances are, if you've even Googled this, you'll see it anyway. It's still worth watching, even if it's spoiled. But Aubrey Plaza...
Nick, step out for a sec. Let him step out.
Yeah, Nick.
Nick.
Okay, so Nick's stepping out.
We'll signal you. I'll do a thumbs up when we're ready.
No, we'll do an X. We'll do an X. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. Aubrey Plaza is the villain of the show.
Yes.
And is not even Aubrey Plaza. That's just a form this psychic character has taken to worm its way into David's mind. What it really looks like is a fucking giant fat vampire from the first Blade.
Yes,
that's what he actually looks like. Yes. That's Shadow King, right? Yes. Like, it's...
And Shadow King is horrifying when you see him. You see him in snippets in that first episode, and it's just more so like, what the fuck is that? It's gross, it's ugly. And then as the season progresses, you're like, oh, that's the villain? And he's just fucking terrorizing fucking David the whole time. And then you have like, was it the angriest boy or whatever in the world, who's like another kind of form of him? You know, and of course Aubrey Plaza is another form of him pretending to be his friend, basically, and just being there as like, you know, like, oh, you killed me, but I'm here for you, man. Yeah. And the whole time it's fucking Shadow King just fucking with him. That's great stuff.
Yes, and the great thing is it adds to the metaphor, because the Shadow King has been there since birth, like his whole life, just fucking with him. Because, and again, like it's been a little while since I've seen the show, so I might not remember all the very specific details, but isn't it like the Shadow King sensed his just pure power and wanted to corrupt that for himself? Isn't that basically the reason that he's in his head?
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. I feel like, I think later in the show, because I mean, this is part of the comics, is that a big part of why Shadow King is fucking with him the whole time is just because he's Professor X's kid and he hates Professor X. He hates Xavier.
That's fair.
And he's just like, he beat me in a fight, so I'm just going to completely destroy his child, basically. I'm going to make him insane. So...
Yes.
And it's an interesting concept, but I think that's not really the driving force for the show version. The show version is definitely just a case of all-encompassing power that you have. Give it, basically. I'm a vampire, essentially.
Yeah, and it's fucking terrifying.
Yes.
He is in... It really plays like a monster from your nightmares. And I don't mean that in a hyperbolic way. This is going to be a cliched way to reference it, and I don't think this is actually a good comparison, but just off the top of my head, it's the one I can make. They do use a lot of David Lynch inspiration for this show, as far as telling the story through metaphor, through motifs, through dream logic. It's very rare that you know if you're actually in the real world or in some sort of dream world within the story of the show. So the fact that the Shadow King doesn't look like he's like a monster from your nightmares, and you know, and it's like Pennywise or whatever. Like, no, this is like a freaky fucking creepy ass thing that you definitely like would just kind of remember when you woke up, but you're unsettled.
Yes.
You know,
No,
it's
absolutely.
like, it looks like something that would lurk in your head.
Yes. No, big time. 100%.
Yeah.
I think that's such an interesting take on the character. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, how he eventually realistically looks in the show is how he looks in the comics, where he's just some guy with a fez hat on. But that's kind of the idea, is that, like, he is just there to fuck with David. He is there to terrorize him and make his life hell. Because why not? You have power. I want it. Screw you, basically. And that's terrifying to think about. And the fact that, you know, and I love the twist of the first season, especially. Like, I still, to this day, I've seen the whole show. It's been a hot minute, obviously. I watched it as it came out. The first season, I still think, is the best season of the bunch. I still think that is, like, you could watch that whole thing and get a pretty satisfying, complete experience. But I think one of the greatest things about that is that the great twist of Aubrey Plaza, who gives such a phenomenal performance, turns out to be the Shadow King, and it's such a betrayal, and you feel it. You feel like David in the moment. So, cannot recommend. Based off just that twist alone, based off of just the villain, could not recommend it alone. And now that Nick is back, we should probably talk about Dan Stevens. So we should probably throw up our X's.
Yeah, yeah.
Do me my X-Men.
All right. Okay. Yes. So,
have you guys talked about the cinematography or anything yet?
Not yet, but we were. I
Not
think
yet.
Before we
Not
get
yet.
there, we're gonna, because we already went over one performance. We should probably talk about Dan Stevens, who is fantastic in this also.
yeah, Dan Stevens brings a true pathos to this character, to a character that is like a former goth, is constantly depressed, is anxiety ridden, all ingredients for a really annoying character if you play them wrong or if they're written wrong. But you completely buy it, and you're like, yep, if I had to live with this in my head my entire life, I would just be wearing trench coats and drinking constantly and like not give a shit. Like, you know, just hanging out, eating old candy bars and old shopping carts in an alley with some random person. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a thing that happens in the pilot. Like,
it happens pretty early on. Yeah, he's just eating fucking shit in the fucking street corner, and I think Aubrey Plaza is like just destroying shit just because. So,
yes, it would be very easy for David Haller to come across as like the goths from South Park. Like, oh, life is terrible. But no, both the writing and Dan Stevens bring an incredible authenticity to what David Haller goes through.
Yes, and I think this is definitely the show that I think put Dan Stevens more so on the map, because obviously he'd been the guest, which is fantastic. No one remembers that he was in that Beauty and the Beast movie because nobody remembers that movie happening. So, but this was the show that I think really helped balloon his career a lot and make people realize, like, this guy's fucking fantastic, you know. And I this year alone has been the year of Dan Stevens. He's popped up in so many blockbuster movies already. So I'm happy. He's a fantastic actor. I'm happy to see him thriving.
Absolutely, he's a great part of Abigail.
Yep, yeah, he's so much fun, Abigail.
He is an amazingly handsome character actor. Like, it's rare that someone so good looking can also pull off the character actor vibes, but he's terrific. And I would just say, like, not that anyone should do this, but if one were to adapt the Alan Moore Miracle Man comics, do it now so that you can get Dan Stevens to play him. That's all I'll say.
I was getting real worried because I was just like, I'm not saying, but if you see Dan Stevens, cut a lock of his hair off for me, please.
I'm not going to say this, but you should do a deep dive and try to find his address. No.
I completely agree about giving Dan Stevens his flowers, because he was so fucking good in this, man. His performance was like fantastic. So, like, to kind of jump in, because I know I've been away for a little bit in the episode, my perspective on this, to kind of speak to what Marty and Andy alluded to earlier, this show, to really speak to its credit and just a testament to how, you know, just great of a television series it is overall. I'm coming into this really not knowing dick about, like, this character. Like with much stuff we watch, I don't really know shit about. Nobody
did. Not even us.
I was aware.
I've loved this shit my whole life. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was aware, like when it got announced, like I did a cursory like Wikipedia like look at like Shadow King and David Haller, and I was like, okay, like I'm interested to see where they go for this, because like this looks kind of nutty between like the art style and the concept. I'm like, this looks interesting, but Dan Stevens' performance in this, he brings such a human element to this character where he's both like charismatic and like charming in his own way, but he's also like, I think portrays just a deeply unwell person. Like he just comes across, he'll start talking and, you're kind of getting into the groove of things. And then someone will ask him a question that throws him off his game. It's just one thing that kind of triggers him. And then he just starts breaking down. Like he starts like not being able to keep coherent thoughts and not trusting his senses, because he's a, fully blown schizophrenic. So he doesn't know what's real. He's questioning it. And I think Stephen's performance here really, really drove home just that balance that he had to play throughout the entire performance of just like, okay, how do we get across to someone who is trying to almost like baby step his way through life, because as Andy said, he's been gaslit his entire being into being that he's crazy and that the things that he sees and hears aren't real, until he finally gets a fucking reality check that like, oh no, it actually might be real, and oh shit, this is real. But then he doesn't know that. Like, and I really love this first again, I've only seen it so far as of this recording on the pilot episode, but I really love the kind of cat and mouse thing they do this entire episode, where you're like really questioning like, okay, what is real? Like what's in David's head, and what is just something that he's like recanting from his own kind of like mentally ill perspective? What is actually the truth? And then what is those agents like, gaslighting him into believing? So it does this really, really fun, I think, a kind of misdirection throughout the entire episode of like, you don't really know, like you're kind of like hesitant, like you're seeing as it plays out, but there's always something in the back of your mind until the very end of the first episode where you're like, I don't know if this is real. You know what I mean? Because David doesn't know if it's real. You know what I mean? Until you finally get the very confirmation in a very like touching moment when he's reunited with Sydney of like, is this real? And I think the writers deliberately did this where they, had David voice the audience concern of like, is this fucking real? Is everything I just seen with this motherfucker throwing boulders and flicking guys away and them escaping this facility? Like, is any of this shit real? Is my man having a moment? Is he crashing out right now? And then she just kind of puts her hand on his face, is like, this is real. All right, this is real life. And it's like, okay, cool, we can get on with it then. So yeah, this series, I really can't praise it enough, man. Like, I'll let the other guys jump in for a second, but fucking A, man, you know me, I'm a sucker for production. Oh boy, the production value on this, combined with the just A1 cinematography, this is on another fucking level, man, especially for TV.
It only gets better as it goes on. This show is so expertly shot. It is a gorgeous fucking television series. It's a gorgeous piece of media. I cannot recommend, just on a visual aspect alone, Legion is far and above so many other productions. So you will not be disappointed if you continue on the show, Nick. I promise you that.
Oh, God, yeah. It's worth every second that you invest into it. And I'll just say, like, very briefly, like, I haven't seen... I watched this when it came out, just like Martin. So it's been 7 years since I've seen the bulk of it. But, like, still to this day, 3 things from just the pilot that stick out to me. That part where he's talking to Hamish Linklater, and he's getting his interrogation, and you see the pen start to quiver, and then it just like right into his cheek. Yeah. Like, it's violent, because it's like, it's not gonna kill him, because in a lesser show, it would be like, he'd have like a knife or a gun from one of the guards, like hovering to his head or something. But this is just like, no, it just looks really painful. Yeah. A fucking pen going into your face. I love the reveal when he walks out of that interrogation room that they're like in a gym, like in a swimming pool or whatever, which is so cool. And then I think there's also a great way, like, because again, it's FX. They have a lot of resources. He obviously got a blank check, but it's still television. They had a great way of showing David's powers where they've got him, like, chained up in the pool, and he just slips under the water, and you just see, like, fire explode within, and then just the skeletons drop into the pool. And you're like, holy shit. And that's so much more effective than any kind of, like, CG, like, people's heads blowing up.
And they're like, yeah.
Yeah, in a lesser show, speaking of Fan Fort Stick, in a lesser show, every scene with David going crazy would just be that scene of Doctor Doom walking down the hall where people's like heads are blowing up on the like,
yeah.
like yeah. In a lesser show, that's all they would be able to explore. Yeah,
I'm so glad you brought that point up, Andy, because yeah, I mean that speaks to Hawley as a creative, just like the expertise in the show, because the subtle visceralness of like the violence we do see in the show, I think is way more effective than if they would have like, you know, slave driven a bunch of fucking CGI artists and VFX artists to like make something like horrid, you know what I mean, in like 2 weeks to produce it. So thankfully they spared some people that because we get a lot more effective and artistically, I think it works a lot better. So just like Andy mentioned, that pool scene with the charred corpses falling into the water, way more effective than whatever fucking nonsense they would have done. You do get a brief moment if you are a sucker for like, you know, a bunch of fucking CGI telepath like shit going on in those brief moments when he's in the kitchen, like for instance, in those flashbacks and you see all the like objects flying around him. That was fantastic because it was so good. It was so simple and brief. Like you didn't need it to go any nuttier than it already was. Just having all those objects fly around because, you know, if you're any kind of editor, if you're little objects like that, way easier to kind of hide with the CGI than if you were to do a bunch of like real people floating around in there, you know? So that was really effective. And then lastly, I'll say Audrey Plaza, like when it's revealed like she's like in the wall, you know what I mean? Like her splattered fucking like corpse in the wall. And you only see it when the security alarm like lights flash, like that red crimson light flashes and it illuminates everything and it goes dark. And you just see in that brief flash, you see her fucking just almost like painted, like just splattered inside the wall. That was way more like impactful to me than if it would have just been like, you know, whatever they could get away with on FX for like actual like gore. I think it just works a lot better for what they did and in the constraints of TV. Because again, Hawley's a fucking you know, he's a genius. He's an absolute chef, so he knows what he's doing within the constraints of the medium he's working.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love there's a little bit in the first episode that I've always enjoyed where it's like, how do you convey voices in your head? How do you convey that in a visual language? And I love the idea in one sequence is to just have like everyone around him just start yelling and talking directly to them, even though you know they're not doing that. Like that's clearly not what's happening. But he's just like and he feels like their voices like they're actually just talking and yelling directly to him because he's reading all their fucking minds at once. Basically, that's great. That's a great way to tell.
That was so good. That was so good.
It's also up to Dan Stevens' performance that this works because again, another thing I remember from the pilot is prior to that kitchen scene where everything blows out around him, he's like having an argument. And it's like you're like walking through the house in the way that you're walking through his memories, but like you come into like the middle of an argument with him and his sister, I think. But like he literally like screams and it's like so raw. He's like, I don't want to talk about it, God, and like walks. And I remember even like back then I was like, oh, that's acting. Yeah. Like that's some good shit right there. Like that. And you know what? It's harder than it sounds to convey like domestic arguments without it sounding really lame on screen. Dude. You know, there's plenty of movies where people are yelling at each other, and it's supposed to be raw and real, and it's just so overwritten.
I did not hit her. Yeah. I did not do this. I did not.
It's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
Hi, Aubrey.
No, I completely agree. Again, just from one actor to another, man, fucking Dan Stevens absolutely killed this because you're right. Scenes like that require like all of the emotional scenes. I think the performances across the board are really, really good in this first episode. Even from Homeboy, one of the agents that like doesn't talk, he's just like the curly haired like partner. He was great too for just how like creepy and like intimidating he was, and he doesn't say a fucking word. But I think all of like the emotional scenes with like Dan, you know, David and Sydney especially, I think they're just absolutely fantastic, and they do a really great job of conveying in a realistic way. Like these are two deeply like, you know, unwell people, at least, you know, especially in the context of like when we encounter them, they're still just kind of mental health patients and not X-Men yet. They do a really good job of like them like awkwardly trying to navigate like each other's like illnesses, you know, with Sydney not wanting to be touched at all, David you know, being a schizophrenic and like he really wants to connect with her but then they can't be intimate. I thought the scene with them like in the reflections, that was beautiful, like the way they do it where he's like kissing her in the reflection and that's their little workaround, like shit like that. live for stuff like that. Like that was so sincere and like did such a great job conveying the relationship and the kind of bond that they form very quickly. But you can tell, at least to me, it was believably shot where it's like, oh yeah, I can get behind them falling this fast for each other. So you can understand the motivation of David wanting to hunt her down and seek her out when she disappears and they get separated in the way that they did. So again, the fantastic performances across the board. And just to kind of get back, because I can't stop geeking out about the like cinematography enough, dude, and the fucking production value. But the fucking transitions in this, they're so good. They go so hard, man. I loved every single transition. I loved this subtle kind of like they very subtly and lightly bled in scenes as they were transitioning. So like for the thing that really comes to mind is David's in the first room with the agent. He's being interviewed, and there's like I think a shot behind David or the wall next to them, and you kind of hear them playing ping pong, and you kind of see the opaque silhouettes of somebody playing ping pong, and then transition to that like almost like overhead shot of them on the ping pong table. It like this show has so much fucking sauce. It's not even funny, dude. Like it has no right to be as good as it is. And these fucking transitions, this is how you know the shit is cooking, because I'm over here freaking out about fucking transitions and scenes. But that's how well this is shot. Like every scene is a fucking painting, man. Like the way they all flow into each other, it is magnificent. I absolutely cannot sing its praises enough. And the last thing I'm gonna glaze this movie up, or this film, or glaze this show up about. See, that's how good it is. I think it's a fucking movie. Is the choice to set this in like the late 60s, at least like that's what I'm understanding. Again, I've only seen the pilot, but I'm pretty sure this is set in the late 60s just based on like all the like the way that people are like dressed and everything like that. And even if it's not, just the choice for them to go with that aesthetic type, I adore it. I can't speak enough to like how sick of a choice that was, because that gives the film, or the see, there I go again. It gives the show an identity. It grounds it in this aesthetic of just like and granted, the late 60s, everybody was swagging out, but like I really, really just appreciated them giving it some kind of identity and giving it some kind of like look. It's not just plain Jane, everybody's just dressed in regular clothes. It's like, no, like everyone in the mental institution has like a uniform, and it happens to be a dope ass jacket, but like it's a uniform. When they step out into like the actual main city, everybody has that like crazy like 60s like dresses and big hair, or like the really, really like dope and like fresh to death like smoking jackets and like pants and like just it's just really, really dope aesthetics that I really appreciated, and really added a sense of, again, identity and its own unique aesthetic to the entire first episode. So again, I don't know how the rest of the season turns out, but this first one, that's one of the first things that jumped out at me and gripped me. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So we actually have like the creator actually wants to have a unique look and aesthetic to like their work. It's not just going to be the same kind of generic looking ABC shit. It's going to be an actual show that stands out, and you remember people with actual fucking costumes. Thank God.
Yeah. I'll just tell you right now, it's modern day, but the 60s is obviously the aesthetic choice in the show. It takes such an inspiration from
with that.
And absolutely. But it does like a very timeless thing because of that, because you could pull whatever look you want from any decade and apply it to modern day, and now you've just created a whole new world, or you've made something that's so visually unique. It's kind of like in like a fucking like me and Andy will know, where it's like, in a fucking Batman cartoon that's like, set in like the 40s, it's a cool aesthetic choice. Or when you have a show that is like set in modern day, but pulls from Art Deco period for like costume design, for cars, for all that kind of shit. So it's a good creative choice, and it allows for a lot of visually splendid scenes. There are so many well shot moments in this show, and in this first episode, of course, too. It's taking the aesthetic of a decade and applying it to the modern day. And trust me, it doesn't let up. It goes even further. It goes harder on that later on. So,
what a choice! I'm so glad they went for it.
Yeah,
this show does not let up. But I feel like we need to, because we're already 40 minutes into this episode, and we still have a a whole movie to talk about.
Let me get.
I have one thing to say about Legion, but Martin first.
I was gonna say I got two fun facts, or one fun fact and something that we need to hold in our pocket for later when discussing New Mutants. Number one, the weird guy with like the curly hair behind Hamish Linklater, that guy over there. If you have an eye for these bullshit comic book things, he was the clone of Lex Luthor on Smallville for 2 episodes, and he was also the weird, creepy German scientist that somehow is still from Krypton in Man of Steel. So there's that for you.
He's the guy with the cloudy eye in the show, right?
Yes.
Okay. He's also a fake psychic in the film Grave Encounters, which everyone should see, which is fantastic.
Need to watch that.
I can't believe I fucking remember that. But
He's a very memorable actor when you see him.
Yes, exactly, and he's fantastic. All I'll say about Legion on a ending note is we're talking about like the metaphor and everything, and how it takes a real story and it inserts the comic book stuff when it's necessary. Mm-hmm. This came out at the perfect time for me because I started college in 2016, right? Like fall 2016. So this comes out spring 2017, right? And so like when I was in high school, let's just say, or no, we will say, because I was in high school, I was like fairly cynical and just being honest, like from insecurity, as everyone is in high school. But because of that, I was fairly cynical and just sort of brushed off a lot of opportunities and, opportunities to connect and to grow my social circle because I was so cynical. Now, I got to college. My first semester sucked. That professor knows who she is. She's terrible. But yes, it was a difficult adjustment period, both academically and just lifestyle-wise of getting to college, right? So spring starts to roll around, and I realize I actually kind of have a handle on this. And I'm starting to feel like a little bit better, but obviously everyone still has anxiety. I mean, I'm freaking 19 years old. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, I'm sitting here in an algebra class that I don't know if I'm going to pass. Like, everyone has anxiety. So watching this show where David Haller realizes that the way that he saw the world was not quite how it actually is, and once he gets into this new environment, it makes him reevaluate a lot of the things that had happened to him previously. Well, I mean, that's just the fucking college experience right there. That's to a T. Like,
it must have been so nice because when I started college, it was when fucking Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. started. So,
that's just like college as well because you're around a bunch of people that you're never going to see again, and that have no effect on the world at large at all.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
I love the way you spin this, Andy.
Exactly. So I'm just saying this show hit me at a particularly important time in my life, and it holds a very special place in my heart for the way that I related to it at the time. There we go. Thank you, Noah Hawley.
Thank you, Noah Hawley. You all have to watch the show. It's on Hulu. It's, I think, 30 episodes or less. You have to watch it. It is fantastic. It tells a complete narrative. I remember as the show was coming out, it was very worrisome if it was ever going to get a 3rd season simply because the Fox acquisition was going through and everything was getting canceled at this point. So somehow, probably because Hulu was just like,
I know.
Or probably because FX was just like, we're just going to keep doing our thing over here until they say no. So
yeah, exactly.
So we got very lucky. You got the complete story. It's only on streaming. Unfortunately, they only did DVDs of 1 and 2. There's no season 3 physical release. So hey, if someone could please just buy out the whole series for home video release, I'd appreciate it.
And the DVD for season 2 is print to order. Yes. When I got it from Amazon, it's in like one of those crappy, like really thin black plastic cases where they just have like the printed disc. Like it's so obviously not meant for home media consumption. Like it's definitely not meant to be on the shelves at any retail store. They just print like the fucking like box art is like 480p. I have it over here. I was so pissed. I spent like $30 on it on Amazon. Like, because I have the first season on DVD, and that's like a real home media release with like the clear plastic case and the little insert where you can read about like all the all the cast and stuff. It's great. It's reversible box art. Man, somebody put this shit on Blu-ray.
And for one little thing, like I said, there's a little thing that in here that I think ties into something I want to just quickly mention when we get to the end of New Mutants, is that in season 2, it's not really a spoiler because this is not relevant to plot at all, but every episode of season 2 starts with a narration on a certain philosophical idea. And it goes on for about 5 or so minutes, and it's all narrated by John Hamm. Why is this important? Well, dear viewer, that's why you need to listen to us talk about New Mutants, because there's a lot of history with this movie and a lot of things that were going to happen that didn't happen. So,
many involving John Hamm.
Many involving John Hamm, actually. So,
but now we need to move on to another. I'm trying to think of a good transition. I'm not Noah Hawley. I can't transition as well. But I'll just say this is another X property that was basically only seen because of streaming.
Pretty much.
Here we go. The New Mutant.
Cue the Marilyn Manson cover that played in the trailer that they dropped because he got canceled for being a creep.
Yeah, exactly. And that'll get into what we're talking about too. But Nick, you reviewed this for the Poly Post back in fall of 2020. Do you still remember what happened?
Oh God. Okay. Yeah. So, So I actually saw this. I saw this at a drive-in with my girlfriend at the time, and I nearly fell asleep. And mind you, I went to go see this movie as part of my fucking job on campus in college, writing for like our local paper on campus. So I went there. I managed to thug it out, and from what I remember, when I didn't fall asleep watching it, and from what I remember now, long story short. This is a more grounded spin-off of the X-Men universe in which there is a almost like a mental institution for troubled youths, but unlike the warm Professor Charles Xavier, this is closer to like a fucking prison than anything else. So the story follows. I can't even remember her name. Help me out here.
Daniel Moonstar.
What's the main girl?
Danny Moonstar.
Oh,
So-
yes. Oh, that famous character.
Who could forget?
I
Who could
shouldn't
fucking
say that
forget?
David Haller is Legion. Whatever.
Yeah, true. So Danny Moonstar, she's having these visions, and after a tragic incident with her family, she somehow one way or another ends up at this institution with a bunch of other mutant youths that have powers, and basically the whole premise of this institution is to help them with their struggling abilities and how to contain them and how to control them, so that way they don't manifest in unprovoked ways. And it's all kind of set with this creepy tone of like, obviously you're not supposed to trust the institution. And as Danny is making friends and enemies with the local kids here at the Institute, she's trying to unravel the conspiracy of like what's really going on here. And the main doctor, she's being very like elusive and coy and keeping the kids locked up and separated so that way they don't collaborate, they don't use their powers, they don't get to explore their powers. And then something happens and a giant demon bear shows up. And all the kids
Oh boy!
To defeat the demon bear, and I'm not making this up. It's a literal demon fucking bear, and they all team up to defeat it, and then they do, and they're able to escape the weird cuckoo's nest prison. And that's literally all I remember from this, and I literally had to write a fucking paper on this.
Well, I just rewatched it today.
Please fill in the blank. I don't remember shit.
No, you actually covered a pretty good majority of the actual plot, because a lot of this is just characters just talking and sitting down and talking about their problems.
Emphasis on sitting.
Yeah, I don't know why Andy highlighted this so much, but yes, they do sit when they talk a lot in this movie.
Okay, I'll get into it later, but Okay, well, there's nothing else to fucking look at in this fucking movie. I can't believe a movie shot by Peter Deming, who did fucking David Lynch movies, looks this blah. I cannot believe it.
I do think that's okay. This is gonna be a whole fucking question of what was supposed to be the movie, what wasn't. But I'll tell you right now,
exactly.
The fact that this movie was the final edit of this movie was not done by an editor who was supposed to do the movie, I think kind of says enough about what probably went on in the post-production process, to the point where it's if you watch that teaser trailer for the movie from 2017 and then you watch the final movie or the final trailer, you could see they went for even a completely different color tone for the movie than what they actually had originally. They bumped up those shadows. Part of that being that this movie, we're going to go through this. There's a whole fucking history of this fucking thing. But essentially, once it got picked up by Marvel Studios, they're like, we need to make this more appealing to the Marvel Studios audience. So kick up that color contrast, and we're going to release a more digestible trailer. So anyway, yeah, this is a weird movie. That's the best way to say it. It is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 with X-Men, essentially. That is the whole idea.
Yes.
You are the Dream
pretty
Warriors.
good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, you are the Dream Warriors, except that, you know, the main hero character you're following is essentially unintentionally being the Freddy Krueger of the movie. She is the one making them see all of their worst nightmares. The fucking hick kid killed his dad accidentally in a mining incident because of his power, so he feels guilt about that. The Irish lesbian werewolf lady killed a priest because he was assaulting her and tried to, like, murder her, essentially. So she feels guilty about that, and she's Catholic, so guilt is inherent. Then fucking the one Sunspot, basically, that guy, the fiery guy, who's definitely not Johnny Storm.
He's Brazilian Johnny Storm, damn it.
Brazilian Johnny Storm. He got shipped off to the Institute because he accidentally torched his fucking girlfriend, so he feels guilty about that. And then, for whatever reason, totally racist magic, essentially, was fun story, was absolutely molested as a child, and
Jesus
and her manifestations of her molesters are people wearing smiley face masks, who are, like, really tall and gangly. It's pretty
and voiced by Marilyn Manson, so that's fitting.
Voiced by Marilyn Manson for some reason. So,
what the fuck?
Yeah. Again, pre-allegations.
Well, I was gonna say, it ends up being fitting if it's Marilyn Manson fucking voicing them.
Right. So, Danny unintentionally, her power that you discover throughout the movie is that she is able to take your fears or your insecurities and give them physical form. Hence the Demon Bear, because she's Native American, and this was a comic series written in the 80s, so everything was a little bit more on the nose. So, her manifestation of fear is a giant demon bear, which goes on to attack the fucking little hospital thing they're staying at, and they have to kill it. It kills the evil doctor, who is actually working for the Essex Corporation, which is a company that was name dropped in X-Men Apocalypse, Logan, my mistake.
Logan,
yeah. And is responsible for X-24 and all that shit, and X-23, and you see fucking footage from Logan in the movie, so they're trying to make that connection pretty clear.
Shock.
Huh?
That was such a shock seeing the Logan footage.
The
I was
footage
like,
of the children, yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, I can't believe they tied this to anything.
Well, I mean,
we went through so many fucking re-edit.
I kind of just took it as like, okay, so this is just post Logan. Okay, fine. I'm like, whatever. I guess gives it a happier ending.
I was gonna say.
Go ahead.
Oh, keep going, Martin. Keep going, Martin. You're this movie's strongest soldier.
I am. Because I'll just say it right now. I like this movie. I quite enjoy it. I don't think it's really good. But I do think it's got some good merits. I love what it does with the characters. I love the fact that their fears become the physical manifestations, and I love that they're so fucked up inherently, of just like, she killed a fucking priest and now he's just come back for revenge. I think that's kind of cool. Or the smiling rapist guys. That's fucking weird. Why would you do that? But that's pretty cool. That's fucked up. So
we have to take that clip. We have to take that audio clip. Why would you do that?
Why would you do that? You know, well, I mean, like, you know, Josh Boone was probably just like, well, you know, this is a franchise that had Bryan Singer and Brett Ratner, so why not give them physical form in these movies? You know, they're so important to the foundation of the genre. But yeah,
and much like their victims, all these characters are playing minor X-Men roles.
Yes, absolutely. So
they are gotten into this movie because they're minor X-Men roles.
Yes, 100%. And I will just say, as someone who owns New Mutants #1 and the steelbook copy of New Mutants, which has a weird X on the back of it because X-Men, and have the 4K. As someone who owns all of that, is the strongest soldier for Josh Boone's New Mutants.
Okay, let me just say this. Okay, I'm going to just dive into this.
Go for it.
Okay? Because I was fucking hyped for this. I heard Josh Boone initially on a very long podcast with Kevin Smith, which I am also using this as an excuse to complain about the fact that Kevin Smith has all of those podcasts behind a paywall now, which really irritates me. So I have to pull out my old iPod Touch, which still has it downloaded on it, but that's beside the point. Josh Boone is a very sincere creator. I have nothing against the man at all. I'll freely say he sent me a very nice, encouraging message when my first short film dropped, and it won a little minor award at a Cal Poly Film Festival. I love the guy. I don't think this is his fully realized vision. What I am criticizing is the fact that you had a movie ready to go, and instead of just going the full 100 yards with it or whatever, Disney, after acquiring this, decided to just edit it into like a Disney Channel level movie and just crap it out. When it's like, you shot everything. Like, he's right there. Like, just let the guy finish it in post.
Yes.
You know?
Well, okay. This is okay.
Yeah.
Nick, do you know, like, the fucking disaster of a post-production this movie had?
Oh, my God. What, did Kevin Smith take over this podcast for a second? Because I couldn't hear him.
He put Nick behind a paywall.
Exactly.
Can you hear me now? It's good?
So it's a little fuzzy, but it's better. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we should be good.
I was just saying that. So I don't know the full extent of it, but because I had to write an article for it, I did some research into it. So I am aware that it was an absolute shit show and that this was almost done. Like, it was all filmed already. And then, like Andy had said, it was acquired by Disney after the acquisition, and it was just shelved. Like, as we're seeing, unfortunately, a lot now with the major studios, projects are completed or at least fully filmed, and then they're just shelved. And instead of just canning them completely, they just put their collecting dust and then busted out after, as Andy had mentioned, it went through all this kind of changes in the post-production to make it more in line with Disney's kind of portfolio and those type of Marvel films. So I'm a little bit aware of the history of it, but not the full extent. So I'm really curious as to exactly how much of a shit show this was.
Okay, so this is a shit show that starts even in the pre-production phase. Now, as someone who is Disney's strongest critic, and this will definitely play a part in it, and Fox's strongest soldier, I have to lay some blame on Fox, unfortunately, for what happened with this movie. So essentially what happened is that, I know, gasp. So essentially,
wait, Fox fucking up?
Yeah.
How?
So essentially, Boone came forward with the idea. They were just like, hey, we're interested in New Mutants movie. This was like 2009. So they were just like throwing the idea, put the name up on the board. Maybe we'll get to that one day. So after doing Fault in Our Stars in 2014, Josh Boone approached them. It was him and I believe his buddy, I think his name's Nat Lee, I want to say. They essentially wrote a comic, like they did their own comic trilogy of all three of the New Mutants movies they wanted to do, and they brought it to Fox in 2015 to propose their New Mutants pitch, essentially. So Fox was really happy with it. They loved the idea of it. He wanted to go kind of a horror route, but he was like, oh, you know, I want to pull from like things like Stephen King, Rosemary's Baby, that kind of stuff. So, or The Exorcist. He didn't even name drop Nightmare on Elm Street 3 for a while. That came in after. So he pulled all these things. They propose the idea. They write the script and everything. Before it starts filming, essentially, I'm going to tell you right now, like 12 writers probably worked on this. There's about 6 that are named, and then an uncredited writer's room of FoX-Men people who worked on it. And essentially the idea was, we can't make this a straight-up horror movie. We have to tone it down a little bit. Why don't we make it a YA, young adult movie, because those were still popular in the 2010s, and add horror elements to it. So that's what they ended up shooting. The movie that you see, that is the movie they filmed. Unfortunately, that is everything they filmed because they weren't allowed to do anything after initial production ended. So, and this is where it gets more fucked up, is once that really great teaser trailer came out, that's very soon after the movie got delayed. Now, here's the really fucked up part about that. That teaser trailer is a fucking lie, because the movie that they shot was not like that at all. It wasn't supposed to be that, like, horror-y, unfortunately. It wasn't supposed to be that scary. What happened was, what happened is, essentially, Fox executives and the trailer house saw how popular it was. It had just come out a month before, made a shit ton of money, $700 million plus. They saw the success of that, and they went, fuck. We have a young adult kind of horror X-Men movie on the line, and we told them to neuter some of the horror stuff in it. Fuck. We need to advertise this as a horror movie. So that's why that first teaser trailer from 2017 is so horror focused, because it was really popular and making fucking bank. What this ended up causing was them going like, okay, well, we're going to delay the release of the movie so that way we can do additional photography and do some reshoots so we can make it scarier. Now, how you do that when you've already shot the movie and you're like, how can we make it scarier? It's not going to happen. It's not going to work out, honestly. So they kept using the excuse of like, oh, we had to delay it because the release date was too close to Deadpool 2, and we didn't want those to be around at the same time, just to mask over like everything else that was going on behind the scenes, which led to them eventually having to delay it to February of 2019. Well, guess what? Fucking Dark Phoenix got delayed to February 2019, so then they delayed it to like fucking February of 2020, and then Dark Phoenix got delayed to June 2019, and then COVID happened, and then it got delayed to August 2020. During this whole period, reshoots never happened. They were planned to happen. They were talked about happening. They were supposed to happen. Essentially, it got too hard to get the cast back together because they got too popular and they were too busy. And then even
a couple of them got too popular.
A couple of them got too popular. A couple of them did. So because of that, though, there came a point where it was like, I want to say like either really late 2019 or like early 2020, maybe pre-COVID, where they had the window to do reshoots, and Josh Boone basically just said, no, they're all older now, and it's very clear that they're older now. We can't film the additional scenes. Yeah. So essentially, the Disney acquisition completely fucked over their attempts at reshooting the movie that was originally instigated by Fox, telling them, we don't want this movie to be too scary, and watching a movie that was really scary and made a lot of money. So it's a whole fucking shit show, essentially. And I mean, like, we can talk about the movie itself before we talk about the things that were cut that were going to be in the movie that were supposed to be filmed. So, I don't know. Go for it.
All I want to say is I love Josh Boone, because listening to him talk about filmmaking, you can tell this is his passion.
We're a couple
Storytelling
of
is his
here.
passion. Exactly. I'm booning left and right in 2017. I'm not even saying this like as a joke.
Yes.
The reason he sent me a really nice message on Instagram is because I DM'd him when it won and said, I don't want anything from you. I just want to let you know that you're one of my biggest inspirations, and I did this because your conversations on podcasts showed me that I could do it. And he's very supportive. So again, all my criticisms are not of him. It's of the end result, which is not his fault. But like when I was that age, like I kind of wanted to be Josh Boone. I was like, that's my career trajectory, because he talked about he didn't go to college. He just started. I'm like, cool, I could drop out of this shit. And I was like, and so he really, really just kept pushing towards a lot of this stuff. And somehow, and I'm sure you remember this, Martin, he got his hands on a lot of IPs. Like, he was working on the Vampire Chronicles. He was working on The Stand. At one point, like, Warner Brothers was going to let him do a 4-part Stand films, like epic film series with like Matthew McConaughey and Christian Bale, which is insane. Wow. Someday we'll do a Heroic Efforts on the Stand TV show that eventually happened, but that's a whole other conversation. But he had his hands on a lot of IPs, including the New Mutants. And the principles this movie are made under is exactly what I would want. I want to make a horror movie about kids with trauma. We're going to, use a little bit of New Mutants details to sort of fit it all together. Unfortunately, what we got was just not his fully realized vision, and I feel really bad for him, because there's a whole lot of controversy coming out about this, and everyone is shitting on it and stuff, but basically, like, Josh Boone deleted his social media when this movie came out, and he hasn't come back. And I don't think he's working on anything, like, at least that's been announced, which is such a shame, because in 2020, both his Stand series and the New Mutants came out. That's not, like, a great double feature. Like, if you don't have anything else in the pipeline. Yeah, and neither of those are his fault.
Both things are examples of producer oversight taking over, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's a shame.
This is why Fred Dekker always has that advice where he's like, no matter what you're working on, have something ready to go and in the works while you're doing it.
Yep.
Because the reason he didn't work on anything for 20 years is because fucking RoboCop 3 came out and then no one would let him do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you always have to have something else in the chamber in case something tanks.
Yep.
And so I feel really bad for Josh Boone that he didn't have a, I don't know, Interview with the Vampire reboot already shooting when this stuff came out.
Yeah.
For example.
No, yeah, it is an unfortunate thing where he was dealt a bad hand when he handled like these really big IPs, and these weren't his fault how they ended up, honestly.
No.
You know, because here's the thing, it's like the movie as it is, I enjoy it for what it is, but it is a big thing of this is the final cut of the film as it was intended when they shot it 3 years prior. Unfortunately, that version was already a compromised version that was then delayed. And then they didn't even get to do the fucking like reshoots they had planned, where they could have probably added a few more scenes to give better characterization, better development. I know there's like 10 minutes of deleted footage on this disc for the movie, so maybe there was going to be a better edit overall. I don't know. That fucking cool sequence where the guys are like pressing on the walls doing the Freddy Krueger thing, that's a deleted scene. It's on there, but they were all over the advertisement. It's on the fucking steelbook, for God's sake.
Where's that shit?
Where's that shit? Why'd you cut that out? So it's a case of we get to see what they shot, but we didn't get to see what was supposed to be the actual final finished film. We didn't get the original editors on this. They were too busy. The two editors that he had hired for New Mutants were too busy editing The Stand to do New Mutants. So he had to get another guy who edited Indiana Jones 5. So
yeah.
So yeah, it's just an unfortunate thing, and again, this movie kind of got swept under because of different of changing production heads. You know what I mean? Like, this is the period where this movie was greenlit in a totally different Fox from when it was released. This is 2017 Fox greenlighting or just finished filming this movie, gonna market it post Logan, post Legion. Things are looking fucking grand. And then the same year, I think they just started like there were whispers about a Disney acquiring Fox, which at the time sounded utterly ridiculous. Unfortunately, this is during a period in America where antitrust laws were being completely ignored, essentially, which will be a big part for the late 2010s. And it's unfortunate that it so affected this film. Like you said, like that first teaser, I adored. I thought it was fantastic. It sold me on the movie right away. The tone of it was so fucking grim. And I'm like, this is what I want to see. I'm back again. I don't know why I did that.
You're too excited.
I know.
You're too excited about
this. And I'm like, and I'm just
Demon
like,
Bear got you.
Exactly. And like, this is what I want to see. I want a horror comic book movie. Now, I will say, we've gotten some before. We've talked about Ghost Rider. We've talked about the sequel, Ghost Rider 2, where there's horror themes or horror elements to it. Morbius, for better or worse, is more of a horror comic book movie. But New Mutants, I feel like, had the opportunity to really be something special. And I think the whole trilogy that they were talking about, where it's like, the first one's Nightmare on Elm Street 3. The second one was going to be Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The third one's going to be The Exorcist. This is what they were trying, this is what the template of what they were going for with these movies. And I think had they been allowed to actually make the fucking movies, I think it would have been possible. Had this movie come out, as it is now, in 2018, when it was supposed to, it probably would have turned enough of a profit for them to make a second one and just be like, okay, this is like our cheaper, like lower rent, like kind of like Blumhouse-y horror spin-off series. So it's not great, but it's doing okay numbers, so we'll make another one. I wish that could have happened. A, because it would have kept Josh Boone employed, and B, because then you would have at least gotten the full idea. And maybe they would have actually let him do the reshoots he was supposed to do to begin with before Disney came up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel really like that. Like, so now that I've gotten this history lesson from you boys, like, I feel really, really bad, man. Just like on an empathetic level, like Josh Boone, from the sound of things, he just got fucked, man. Like Hollywood really just like chewed him up and spit him out. Like, here's a guy who is very clearly passionate about filmmaking. He does it for the love of the game, and he got something that all of us would dream of. Just like you got your hands on two huge IPs that you're in love with, and you want to do them justice, and you have this incredible pitch, and you're able to convince these fucking executives to greenlight your ideas, and you're like, finally, cool, I get to do justice to these ideas I probably, that he probably had cooking in his head for like years, and then he finally gets it, and all the producer meddling, he does it at just the worst time when there is no antitrust law, so all these huge acquisitions are happening, just completely reshaping the film landscape, and he just happens to be a casualty of it. Like, I just really feel for the brother, because this isn't dog shit. This is far from like the worst thing we've ever watched, even on this show alone. It's not great by any means, but there is some merit. So I want to briefly touch on, like, in typical heroic efforts fashion, I want to give its flowers where it's due, at least. I will say, like, the scant horror elements that we do get in this, or at least like what they kept in it, I enjoy it. If nothing else, at least on a conceptual level, like, I enjoy it. I really like that they took this Nightmare on Elm Street angle for it. It plays directly into Danny's powers, so it works thematically, and it also just lets you have some like pretty cool sequences. We keep blazing up that teaser trailer. It was fantastic, and it's what sold me on it. I didn't know shit about the New Mutants like a lot of people, and then I saw that teaser trailer. I was like, oh fuck, this looks super sick. Like, let's get a horror X-Men film. Hell yeah. And there's gonna be some body horror stuff going on with it. Like, conceptually, it's amazing. And what we get in the film, again, at least on a conceptual level, like, I enjoy it. I enjoy what we saw. I like the shots, or at least just aesthetically, I enjoy the shots of like the person inside. I think it's like a washing machine when Sunspot is like having his moment tripping out, and like the person's like burning alive inside the washing machine. Like, that's really evocative imagery. I really like that. I enjoy Daisy Williams, like, Catholic girl guilt, and like the kind of like literal beast within her. Like, that's like a really fun element of like the character. And I thought at least the performances from, like, at least the big names on the project that went on to, do bigger stuff. So, like, Daisy Williams, Anya Taylor-Joy, obviously, and Charlie Heaton.
Maisie Williams.
Maisie Williams. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. The other Brits.
The scariest thing about this film is her accent.
Her Irish accent? I didn't mind it. Why do you hate the accents? They're fine. Well,
here's the thing. Where is Maisie Williams from? I thought she was from Ireland. I thought she was from Ireland. That's why I thought it was a perfect pick for her.
Andy, come on. Is the Irish accent that is the Russian accent that Anya Taylor-Joy puts on really worse than any other fucking Russian accent we've heard in any of these fucking cape shit movies? Come on, man.
Okay, I will say it's not any worse, but those other characters aren't like the main character of the movie. So I hear it in every scene.
You're funny.
Also, she's like the biggest bitch on the planet in this movie. It's like a bad accent with like being a horrible person as well.
I'll just say, I don't really know why they made Magic a little racist in this movie. I don't know why, because she's not like that in the comics at all. I mean, she's kind of a bitch in the comics, so I get that. But I don't know why they carry that over. But at the same time, like, well, she's Russian, and Russians are inherently racist. So
I can't believe I didn't think of this. No. You know the part in Fantastic Four where at the end where they're trying to give them all their character traits, like in the last 20 seconds, and Human Torch is like, how about two guys, a girl, and a thing that nobody wanted? That's her whole character in this entire movie. It's just like freaking like Daniel Moonstar shows up or whatever, and she's just like, oh, you fucking idiot. Like,
she's like immediately she's just like fucking native. It's just like
that was crazy.
He's like dropping slurs and shit.
Yeah.
Well, okay, and also the accents is like the southern dude that like killed his dad in the mining accident. He's like, it's like, I don't know what happened in the mining accident, but I carry this around like the nuggets he carried out of that mine.
That's true.
And you're just like, it's a coagulation of various bad accents of varying levels of badness.
Okay.
This was mind you, this was supposed to be like a positive segment. Like, this was supposed to be the few props you were given the film. So so before we acknowledge just how bad the accents are, just what the few redeeming qualities of this film, accents aside, I think the performances are fine enough to get you through it. And if nothing else, like, it's like, if you turn your brain off a little bit and you treat it like the YA slop that it kind of is, then like it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, everyone does their job. it gets it through. Visually, I thought, again, Anya Taylor-Joy's magic, I thought she was absolutely fucking nuts in this film. Like, as far as like the accent is insane, just a baffling choice. And then the way she acts, she's just like a terrible person, just a real fucking mean bitch the whole time. But I think that's obviously what she was going for.
At least she's got a character reason for it.
And that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at. Like, they work for the role that they're playing. Like, it works for it. And that speaks to the testament of the strength of the actors, that even when they're doing this nonsense, like, they're able to at least convey, even if it's in a Disney Channel ass way, they're able to convey what these characters are supposed to be. And like, I visually, at least, I was really shocked when they announced like magic was going to like be presented in the film, because I'm just like, how the fuck are they going to pull this off? Because like, even from what I understand from the comics, like, knowing her as an X-Men character, I'm like, she's really out there. Like, she's not just like, she has a silly costume, but like, relatively grounded powers they can display on screen. Like, no, she's like a comic ass character. Like, this chick has like a metal fucking armor, an armored up arm, a big ass sword. She's making portals to literal hell. She has a dragon like familiar, and she has like weird like hair horn thingies that come out. So it's just like, she's a really out there fucking character, and the fact they're able to pull it off, as well as they did, I guess. Yeah, you know what I mean? For what kind of comic book bullshit it is, they're able to pull it off and present it. So I'm like, you know what? Cool, that works. But yeah, to get in. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, okay, yeah, I get, like, magic in the comics is a very, like, her costume is fucking ridiculous, and this is my defense for this movie, too, is that, like, okay, well, none of the X-Men movies at this point really adapted anybody's costumes, because, in my opinion, most X-Men costumes look like utter garbage, so...
I can agree with you on that one. Like,
I'm cool with them just wearing their fucking, normal clothing, because even then, Magic's outfit by the end is pretty fucking cool. She's got, like, the fucking,
I like her arm
top and all that. She's got the fucking metal arm. And I do like the little thing with the dragon where it's like she's got as like a sock puppet at first, basically. I'm like, that's kind of that's unique enough. That's cool enough. So
yeah, I liked it.
He's like, I picked all of this up from Hot Topic.
I picked this up all from Hot Topic. There were a lot of brown people there. What was that, Magic?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I will say, we're talking about, like, okay, they do an admirable job of certain powers.
Yes.
There's also parts of this movie where the X-Men powers are not represented well at all. Like that cannonball dude where he just chains himself up. He's like, like outside.
Hilarious. That was some Looney Tunes shit.
I'm like, what the fuck? And he's supposed to be like the most tortured one.
There's a great part with that specific character in the movie where clearly they didn't get the chance to shoot the pickup shot they needed. So there's a part where like the demon bear is like charging the church, and he's like getting ready to fight him, and he's like powering up, and then he just shoots up in the sky, and then the bear breaks through the church. So I think what they were supposed to shoot was like him coming down on the bear and missing or getting whacked aside or something, but it just makes it look like he just fucking flies away basically, and the bear just gets at the fucking church.
One of my other favorite things of this is like that pool scene where Sunspot's in there and he thinks he's gonna get it on, and it's like, oh, it's all sexy and shit, and then like the corpse comes out, he's like, ooh, it's a spooky skeleton, and then like it's so spooky, and like he turns like he's like on fire, and he's like screaming, and they all come in, and then just freaking like Alicia Braga, I think, just grabs a broom and pushes him into the pool. I was like, there's like no better way to like resolve this. It just looks so dumb. Like she's like, get back, kids! It's like a kindergarten teacher. Like,
I'm gonna have to. Like, I thought that was funny. I thought that was intentionally funny. So. And I will say, in defense of the spooky, scary skeleton, it is supposed to be his charred up ex-girlfriend, his charred up dead girlfriend. So,
fair enough. But all this stuff is so vague, like in the movie, that it's like there's not really like
all of
a way to follow it in a way that like has the emotional resonance.
All of their backgrounds are pretty vague. What actually happens is pretty vague, and I feel like part of that again is just. In the rewrite phase for the script, they're like, okay, this goes a little too hard. We got to cut that out a little bit. And then they film it, and they're like, okay, we need to actually put that back in. We'll get to that in a couple weeks, right, guys? And then it's 2020.
I'll just say this. There's two things that make me laugh a lot in this movie. Because I don't think they, like, come across quite the way that they thought they were going to. And this is the part of the movie where I really was like, what in the fuck? Like, so when they're like, oh, we've drugged the doctor so we could party tonight or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, no, but she's like in the office, and then like fucking it shows, no, but it shows them partying, and they're just in a hallway, like scooting around on office chairs, and they're like dancing and shit, like in like a flat shot, and I'm like, it's what?
Again, a scene where they probably thought we'll film more of this in the pickups, and it never happened. Yeah, I get because it's literally. I watched the movie today. I remember the scene. It's 2 shots, one of Maisie Williams and fucking Blue Hunt dancing, and then the other shot of fucking Sunspot and the Hick Kid on like a little tricycle thing, and then it cuts back to them dancing, then back to them on the tricycle, and then that's it. They're done partying.
Yep,
very weird.
Incredible.
And again, because here's the thing, James, Martin.
Run the back.
Yeah. Here's the thing, Martin. You and I both know we are on the same side.
Yes.
Like we're very much like for this movie. Mm-hmm. The only reason I'm criticizing all this stuff is because this is what ended up on the screen. Like sure. I have to separate my admiration for its intentions from my criticisms of what is actually on my TV when I turn this on.
But I think I think it's important that you separate expectation as well, because the thing that you were expecting was a lie. Unfortunately, you were sold on a lie, and it sucks because it's a great teaser trailer, but it's not what the movie was. It's like when you watch the first trailer for Suicide Squad, and then you watch the movie, and you're like, "Well, I gotta see what it is for what it is, I guess." And it's just it's a similar case of just. I appreciate what they were trying to do. I can make fun of the things that clearly don't work, or the fact that, like, I can't blame them too much for, like, the stuff where it's like, you know, clearly they were supposed to do pickup shots for the scene, or, you know, they were trying, or like, it just didn't make the final edit for whatever reason. Because you watch this movie, it's an hour and 34 minutes long with credits, and there's like 10 minutes of deleted footage on the disc itself. So I'm like, this was a movie that at least feels like it needed to be like another 10 minutes to better establish everything. So it just kind of, there's just weird choices that I don't agree with for sure. But I do think at the end of the day, like, trying to make what is essentially a riff on horror films, on Nightmare on Elm Street, in an X-Men setting is a unique enough premise that I think the idea sells itself enough for me. It's just
I love the idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just think it's unfortunate that they weren't given the full ability to completely do what they had set out to do. I do appreciate what was done, though. I do like the actors. Their performances are hammy for sure, but I do like them in it. I think the storyline is okay. It's just a couple of kids locked up in this like little mini penitentiary where she's just like, I'm here for your betterment, to make sure you're all great people who grow up well, but also like, don't mind me taking your blood right now. I'm definitely a scientist. I work for what does she say? Like the higher one or something like that, which is really weird. So
that's not suspicious.
That's not suspicious at all. Yeah, you know. No, my superior. That's what she says. My superior.
Yeah. So that's also not suspicious.
It's also not suspicious. So, you know, it's. I like the setup. I think it has enough of, because I knew going into this movie, like, I knew, like, it's not going to be what I was sold on. It's not going to be that teaser trailer. I knew it was going to be a YA movie with horror elements, not a horror film with YA elements. And because of that, I think that helped me adjust my expectations. Also, it helped, too, that this was, like, the only movie you could see in a theater. And by in a theater, I mean at a drive-in, for most of 2020.
Which I did.
Yeah, which I did, too. So, you know, that helped, too. And recently watching it on 4K, I can tell you right now, the movie's not nearly as dark as I thought it was. I don't know.
Yeah.
that drive-in projection, man, there were moments where I'm like, I don't know what the fuck is even going on right now.
I couldn't see shit. I really couldn't see shit. Like, that's one thing I kind of struggled with. Is like, didn't help that I was falling asleep near the end, but like, goddamn, I was like struggling to remember what the fuck I even saw, like, visually. So I'm like, I can't see jack shit. It's so dark as fuck, man. What's going on?
I promise it's actually visible in the home release. I promise.
You couldn't see shit because your eyes were closed because you had fallen asleep because the movie was boring as shit.
Just wake up next to your girlfriend, you're just like, well, how was it? I couldn't see shit. Well,
She's just not in the car with you.
yeah, right.
In my defense, we were also pulling like a double feature of the drive-in because like it's a fucking drive-in. So I think we saw some forgettable fucking like Pixar movie I think at the time. So it's like I had to like do work and like watch the New Mutants, and like by the end of that I was already like pretty much knocking out, and then I don't remember what the fuck we saw after that.
I think we watched the X-Men, like the first one, because my partner had not seen any of them yet. So I'm like, well, we're gonna go see New Mutants. You might as well watch one X-Men movie beforehand. So we watched that and watched.
See, that's a nice double feature.
So it worked out pretty good. So and we both enjoyed it enough. Had a good enough time. We watched it today together. We rewatched it today and had a pretty good time. And I know it, like you say in your notes, Andy, it does feel like an 80s direct-to-video movie. Absolutely, it does. Good thing I eat that shit like fucking popcorn.
Okay, that can be a good or bad thing.
That can be a good or bad thing. It just depends on who you are and what you like. And I will say it right now, as Nick had said earlier, we have watched worse movies for this show, and there have absolutely been worse comic book movies released since and before this came out. I do think people are a little hyperbolic with this movie sometimes. So, yeah, it's an 88-minute fucking... Before credits, it's like an 88-minute long movie. There's certain character things that don't get fully realized. But also, at least it's fucking quick and it's kind of fun. It's not like a fucking 2-hour slog like I'm watching Thor 4 again. So...
Yeah, exactly.
I'd take this over Thor 4. I will say that.
Yes.
Any day.
And
Any
also,
fucking day.
And also, I will just say, the final fight being some Dark Souls as fucking, fight between like a bunch of wannabe X-Men kids and a giant bear. I'll take it. I'll take it. So,
conceptually, it's tight for sure.
Conceptually, it's a good idea. Yeah. So, do you want to do? Let me know.
I just want to
start dropping the fun facts.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to throw it out there because you mentioned there was a sequel, and my man Warlock was not in this. So I propose if we're ever going to run it back on the New Mutants, let me get a New Mutants do it over again. Include Warlock this time, but I need like a Ralph Bakshi like version of it. Like give me like a Cool World-esque like animated like version of Warlock where he's just like this zany cartoon guy. Just give me that. Just let's get nutty with it because he's already a freaky looking character, and I feel like there's a charm, at least to me, not really knowing shit about the character other than he's like a shapeshifter and like robot alien, is like he looks cool. He looks like a fucking cartoon, like in that New Mutant style. So fuck it. Let me get a Roger Rabbit-esque like tune insert. We just don't talk about why he's just in there for that reason.
That would be cool. I would be down for that. He was supposed to be in the sequel. They didn't use him in this one because they didn't have the budget for it. So
yeah, I can imagine.
So I've been down for that. And I do want to actually I'm gonna say my little weird my conspiracy theory on this movie, because clearly Disney did not want this movie to make any money. Disney wanted this movie to bomb because they were. This is also the period pre cashing in on your nostalgia. So essentially they were just like, we got to wipe the slate so nobody remembers these movies ever existed. So what we're going to do is we're going to dump this in the middle of COVID releases where only like 50% of theaters are open, and most of the big theater states are currently just doing drive-ins. So and I also feel like they ballooned the budget by saying, so like, okay, according to Wikipedia, this movie has a budget of $65 to $80 million, which I don't find that very believable. I find that questionable. Yeah. And I told Andy, I remember years ago telling him this, where I'm just like, I kind of feel like they just rolled in the like marketing budget on top of that to make the movie sound like a bigger bomb when it only made like 50 million. So that's my conspiracy theory. Because this was a period where they were just like, no, we're not touching that fucking, that's not us. That's not Marvel. So this was that period still. They hadn't been kicked in the nuts yet. Not until 2021. So...
If you guys want to see one of the saddest things of all time, look up the New Mutants Comic-Con at Home panel when they were doing like the Zoom panels for Comic-Con. But if you watch it, it's all these people who know, like, first off, they filmed this 3 years ago, so they've already fucking moved on in their careers. But it's all these people who know this is not going to go anywhere, who know that this is just like a tax write-off for Disney at this point.
Yes.
And they're just sitting there, they're like, Yay, it's the New Mutants. Look, if you tweet the hashtag, there's emojis on Twitter, like, yay.
Oh, God.
And they're like, we tried to bond because we wanted the characters to be authentic. Like, you can literally hear like their voices like wavering as they're just like, get me off this fucking Zoom call. They're all in their houses, and the fucking poor panel host I felt so bad for. He's like, hey everybody, it's the New Mutants. Who's excited to meet the cast? And it's like they're all
Jesus.
like fucking zooming in from like their fucking porches. Like,
Yeah.
it's so sad. Like, we really should
bad.
watch it.
We should, yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be
I
a heroic efforts
go.
commentary episode.
I'll just say I watched the whole thing on the day it came out, because I was fucking rooting for this movie up until like it came out. And so like I remember my parents were in the room at the time, and they were just on their phones or you know, reading the magazine or something. And as the panel went on, like they were watching it, I was like, I'm kind of embarrassed like to be watching this like with other people. Like, this is kind of like it got to the point where I'm like, you know how like I've talked about this with my friends where I'm like, you can't watch we shouldn't watch Nostalgia Critic, but you absolutely cannot watch it with other people in the room because it's just humiliating.
No.
That's sort of how it started to feel, where I'm like, I feel bad that people know that I've watched this.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Yeah,
So,
it's
do we have final thoughts before I get to the more fun facts of this movie? And I mean like fun facts like I got to tie back to John Hamm.
Nope, lay it on.
Okay. Whew. Originally, this movie was supposed to be set in the 80s because this was supposed to be released relatively close to X-Men Apocalypse's release. The reason they decided not to do that was because X-Men Apocalypse got a meh reception. So Fox, being how they usually be, completely went like, oh god, code red, dump the 80s aesthetic. We don't need it anymore. So they rewrote the movie to dump all the 80s parts that it was supposed to focus, that was supposed to be the stylistic stuff. So they dumped all that. What this ended up causing was a domino effect on the script, because originally Alexandra Shipp's Storm was supposed to be in the movie, and James McAvoy's Charles Xavier. They were supposed to be in the movie at some point. They were dumped simply because Fox saw the meh reaction to X-Men Apocalypse and went, dump all the 80s stuff, because they were basically trying to clean slate it again, essentially. And that's why Dark Phoenix, again, is in the 90s, not because they were doing the typical decade-by-decade setup, but because originally X-Men Apocalypse was supposed to lead to a trilogy of 80s set X-Men movies. Didn't do well enough, so they dumped that for the 90s. Weird shit. Just like weird, like, okay, it seems like an overreaction, but whatever. So they dumped that. Well, that's not the only character that gets cut. So, originally there was supposed to be an after-credits scene to this movie that they didn't film, because, of course, when you didn't do reshoots, that's not going to happen, where Nathaniel Essex, who is the owner of the Essex Corporation, that appears in Logan, that appears in X-Men fucking Apocalypse, that is the company that funds this mutant research facility, was supposed to appear, and he's Mr. Sinister in the comics, who is like the stupidest named villain ever in the history of comic books. But he looks cool.
Mr. Sinister.
Mr.
Isn't that Bryan Singer?
Yes. that was the surprise casting. He was supposed to be Mr. Sinister. So he was supposed to be in the post-credits scene to set up a sequel or to set up the next step in the X-Men universe canon, which has never been really canon to begin with. And he was supposed to be played by John Hamm. And Hamm has gone on record saying that, like, he was in talks to do it, it just never happened because they never filmed the scenes, basically. So, and why this is interesting is just because this ties back to what I mentioned. John Hamm in 2018 did the narration for season 2 of Legion, so that got a lot of people's peanuts percolating and made them think, is Mr. Sinister supposed to be in New Mutants, which ties into Legion? I'm not shitting you here. This is what happened. So, this is where John Hamm is the crux of the later half of the FoX-Men universe.
Oh my god.
Yes.
That's actually a crazy fun fact, but also
weird?
percolating peanuts is fucking insane.
You're welcome. You're welcome for that. But then,
oh no,
there's more.
Okay, when we do the fucking reel of this, we need Billy Mays going, but wait, there's more.
Ooh, but wait, there's more. Okay. Simon Kinberg, the famous producer of all these fucking X-Men movies, basically said that They had intended him to possibly be in the movie, but they didn't commit to it because they were very certain that Mr. Sinister was going to appear in the canceled Gambit film. So they never bothered to really come up with a concrete plan for the character, because they're like, well, clearly we're going to use him for that Gambit movie. That's definitely going to happen. So that happened.
Oh, Mon Ami.
Mon Ami.
Mon Ami.
Mon Ami. So then, one more. Antonio Banderas.
Wait, what? All right, what is going on?
Was then decided that Antonio Banderas will play Sunspot's father, who is a rich person, as established in the movie. He's like the son of a rich family who like paid off the Essex Corporation to take his kid, basically, and he was supposed to be like the supervillain for the next movie or something. I don't know, but it was going to be Antonio Banderas. That never happened, of course. Which started a whole other trend where everyone thought Antonio Banderas was supposed to be Mr. Sinister, which is not true. And just... I'm going delirious. And connects to the John Hamm-ism of this all. So as you can all see, everything leads back to John Hamm.
Jesus.
Yeah, this is the definition of that, like, babe, come to bed. It's like, I can't. I'm trying to figure out the X-Men continuity. I'm so close to piecing it together. You're literally like Jake Gyllenhaal in Zodiac, and we're like, who played his wife? Like Chloe Sevigny or whatever in that movie? Yeah, that's all of us, and we're just like, please, you have a son. Please spend time with your family.
Did you know this movie tested as well as Deadpool did? Fun fact.
Wow. I mean, that's where you bring in like the nerd crew. It's like very cool.
Very cool. Fun fact. Fox executives were so confident in this movie, they were like, there's no way this could possibly be as big of a flop as Fantastic Four. That's a real thing.
There's no way there'll be a worldwide plague that will shut down our ways of distributing this film, and there's no way this comic book trend is going to start to waver.
There's no way people will get sick of comic book movies, right? They love superheroes. Oh yeah, my exactly. God. Well, that was the bizarre, weird, totally insane production history of New Mutants and our opinions on the movie overall. I like it. That's all I got. I'm tired after explaining all this shit and fun facts. This movie's more interesting just based off of the shit show that went around it than the actual movie. So
it is really fascinating. Yeah, and to watch it in real time was fascinating as well.
Yeah. It came to a point where I didn't even know there was an X-Men movie where Beast was like being a Sasquatch in the woods or whatever. So
Beast, the Sasquatch one. There's a fucking Marvel character called Sasquatch.
Oh yeah, that's
God. Right. Of course there is. Of course there is.
Oh God. Anyway.
You know, he looks a lot like Brett Ratner.
The Squatch.
And see, you know, and much like how there's never a shortage of dumbass comic book characters out there, there's also never a shortage of us dumbasses here at Heroic Efforts. And neither is there a shortage of fantastic films that we're going to talk about. So thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode. We went kind of long on this one, but like Marty had said, there's actually a lot to talk about with even something like New Mutants, because the production side of it is so interesting. And we couldn't stop blazing up Legion because it's fucking fantastic. So if you haven't seen it already, please go check it out on Hulu, like Marty had said. And, you know, fuck it, give New Mutants a watch if you want to, you know, check something out too. But I think reading this Wikipedia article is probably way more entertaining. But all that being said, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Heroic Efforts. We thank you so much. You can find us always at...
Okay, I'll say it first because Martin's dying laughing.
It's percolating his penis.
I don't even know why. He is booning all over those percolating peanuts.
I can't help it.
You can find me at the _super guy on Twitter and Instagram.
And you can find me
Buy my book.
Buy my book. You can find me at Only McFisherman on Twitter. Buy my books, please.
You can find me at Nick Talamante and Monte Nicks. I don't have any books yet, so you're good. Anyway, but you can find us at Heroic Efforts on IG and Twitter. So please follow us there, and please join us next week for more Heroic Efforts. Take care, everybody. See you then.